Hello, I'm going to demonstrate how we do an astrological interpretation, a quick interpretation using vibrational astrology, and we're going to use an event. We're going to use the event of Vladimir Putin invading Ukraine on February 24th, 2022. And I'm making this video on March 3rd, about a week and a half after the invasion. That conflict or war, whatever you want to call it, it's a war that's going on. It's still happening. So it's something that we're thinking about now around the world. But even if you're watching this years into the future, this will give you a good idea of how to jump into a chart, see main themes going on, and how we learn from looking at the chart. In vibrational astrology, we do not always get confirmation of what we anticipate, what we expect. You'll often see with astrologers that if they love one candidate in a political contest, then their interpretation shows how wonderful that candidate is. And if they don't like somebody, how terrible he or she is. In vibrational astrology, that's not always the case. We're going to see how you learn new things by looking at the astrology chart. Now, the information is that the invasion began shortly after 5 o'clock on February 24th, 2022. Some astrologers are using a time of 5:05, some 5:02. I'm using a time of 5:02. And I'm not interpreting the house cusp positions or planets in houses or anything that would change within 10 or 15 minutes because I'm not sure exactly what moment we should use. And also I'm doing the chart for the capital and largest city in the Ukraine, Kiev, and because I'm not using the house cusps and so on, it doesn't really matter which city I use. Okay, now what does this time tell us when we're looking at a mundane event? What it tells us is the motivation and purpose of the invasion. Since the invasion is by Putin, it's going to show us what his motivation and purpose is. And it's going to tell us some basic themes. Now, this does not describe everything about Vladimir Putin or the invasion. It's not so much telling us about him, because people are complex, have many sides to ourselves. It's telling us what part of him and what part of his life and what part of his engagement is coming out at this moment to the forefront. And this chart certainly does not tell us everything about the invasion. It tells us a few things that are very important, but not everything. So we're going to see some of the underlying energetic networks that are driving the invasion. Some of them, some very important ones, not everything, because not everything is in that chart. We need to look at the chart of the people involved, like Putin and so on. But it's amazing how much information we will get from this. Okay, now also, the news reports are that Putin had already decided to invade the Ukraine much earlier. Some people are saying he had made the decision clear in January. There's some indication that China requested a delay. I don't know if that's true, but it appears that he delayed until after the Olympic Games in China. I think it was the day after the Olympics. Boom, he went in. So this time of the invasion is largely a matter of convenience. It's not a time selected when Putin just felt, emotionally charged up. We need to invade today. It was planned and it was just set for what was convenient. Now, what's interesting is that even when a time is just a matter of convenience or just happens to work out that way, it's still like a birth chart, and it sets the tone and the themes and defines some of the essential qualities that are invested into the event. First thing, let's bring up the chart. What do we notice? So we look at the chart. There it is, February 24th, 2022, 5:02 a.m. in Kiev, Ukraine. What do we notice? Well, Venus is 3 degrees below the ascendant. In vibrational astrology, 3 degrees is not that powerful. Also, we're not using anything extremely dependent on the time. and so the house positions, etc., we're not that concerned about. And also, we don't think those are the critically important things in vibrational astrology anyway. One thing we notice is that this Venus-Mars conjunction with a half a degree orb is sextile Neptune. And Neptune at 22 Pisces 13 is sextile right in between them. Looks like a little closer to Mars, but this is all very tight within about a half a degree orb. Venus, Mars, sextile Neptune. 3 planets within about a half a degree. That's important. In vibrational astrology, we're putting an emphasis on 3 or more planets tied together. So we happen to have that in this birth chart. We also see some close hard aspects. Moon is tightly semi-square Mars. But the 3-planet combination gets our attention. What does it mean? Let's go back to our PowerPoint. Excuse me. Neptune sextile the Venus-Mars conjunction. By the way, this is the notation we use. Neptune sextile. We put Venus-Mars in parentheses. Means that they're together. And we can go to the 9 vibration chart to get more information. Because a sextile 1/6 is also 3/18. It's a soft aspect. It will appear as an opposition in the 9 vibration chart. Let's take a look at it. So here is the 9 vibration chart, and there's the Neptune opposition Venus-Mars. So we go into the vibrational chart to see it more clearly, and sure enough, as we expect, the orbs are small. Conjunction with a 6-degree orb, Neptune in between Venus and Mars. At 20 degrees, a little closer to Mars, we can look at the midpoint structures. Let's see what I have set here. Let's turn off vertex, node. Let's remove sun in midheaven. I have conjunctions and oppositions with a 1.5 degree orb. Good. And notice, let me expand this a little bit, that Neptune is opposition the Venus-Mars midpoint 40-minute orb under 1 degree. So that shows that this really is a clear Venus-Mars-Neptune pattern. We saw that in the natal chart, but by looking at it in the 9 vibration chart and seeing that that midpoint structure is within orb, there's a very clear Venus-Mars-Neptune tone quality to this invasion. What does it mean? Back to my PowerPoint. It means there's a romantic quality. Romantic? What's romantic and sweet and lovey-dovey about a war? It might not make sense. I mean, superficially, it doesn't make sense. And this is one of the things in vibrational astrology, is that the motivating forces, the energetic system behind an event can surprise you, and it can look unrelated. Because what's going on energetically beneath the behavior of things can be surprising. And that's what the astrology chart tells us. And in this case, that's what's happening. What does this sweet, romantic, and it's sweet, this is a horrific event, what could it have to do with it? Okay, so I Googled whether Putin was married. I found out that he was married. He's not married now. He got divorced. And then I Googled where his ex-wife was from, and I found out that they went to college together. I think they met when they were in college. That was in St. Petersburg. We're going to look at that in a minute. I'm pretty sure that's correct. And I found out about his life when he was in college, and he was brought up in that part of... we're going to look at all this in a little more detail. So let's see on the next screen an image of what's going on. Here's the image I want to show you. This red circle on the right is Moscow. Okay, so that's where he lives. That's where the government offices are. That's the capital of Russia. Putin grew up and went to college in St. Petersburg, right up here. Notice it's northwest of Moscow. His ex-wife also went to college there. I believe they met there. Now, where is his wife from? She's from a province, or they call it an oblast, if I'm pronouncing that properly, of Russia called Yeah, Kaliningrad. There's Kaliningrad. I've circled it and I've typed in its name. Kaliningrad. What I didn't completely understand is that this province, Kaliningrad, is now separated from Russia. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are now part of NATO. You know, NATO is like the enemy, so to speak, of Russia. They are now part of NATO. And Belarus and Ukraine, this very large region, is kind of a middle ground. Belarus is more sympathetic and more in line with the Russian way. Ukraine has been moving more westernized and more westernized over here. Here's Crimea, the Crimean Peninsula just below Ukraine, which Russia took over in 2014. And Crimea is a tourist spot, has warmer weather, it's on the Black Sea, has great natural resources for farming, for other kinds of natural resources. Wonderful place. Russia wanted it back, Putin wanted it back, and he got it back in 2014. He just took it. And by the way, when the Soviet Union broke up, Putin was in the KGB stationed in the Berlin area of Germany. What we're noticing here is that Putin's life, his passion, where he grew up, the university he went to, where his wife was from, where he was in the KGB, is all west of Moscow. Moscow, even though Russia is mostly east of Moscow and Moscow's on the western edge, Putin's personal life is bound up west of it, in all of these areas. And this is where his love is. The breakup of the Soviet Union broke Putin's heart. I'm quoting here from the bottom of my slide. He mentions many times his misery over this. The misery, how it broke his heart, how distraught he was, how deflating it was that the Soviet Union broke up. Now, when I read that, it's always a KGB guy. He's a militaristic guy. He loves his government. But what I'm getting from this chart is I'm caricaturing him a little too much as this sort of macho, militaristic sort of guy. There's another side. He was a kid. He loved music. He fell in love. He loves these places. This is his world. That's as near and dear to him as whatever world you live in and the country you live in, where hopefully you love it and you feel attached to it, and the nature, the beautiful mountains or rivers or streams and places you went to. He has that love. He is a Russian who loves the world he grew up in, and to him, this is his world, extending from Germany all the way into this region, and it's gone. He's heartbroken. There is a kind of romantic quality he's trying to recapture. Now you might say, there's nothing romantic about this horrific, destructive, violent war. Well, you're right, there isn't. But what's motivating it is partially this. So by looking at the astrology chart, we just get a deeper, clearer sense of what's going on. We hear the words from Putin. We know that message. But when we look at it astrologically, and we look at this map with these areas circled in red, his dear places, and he got one of them back. He got Crimea back. And here's the real tragedy for him. Kaliningrad is now separated. It's like a lost child from Russia. And Belarus is sympathetic. They're losing their world to the West. We'll talk more about this in a minute. So it's letting us know some of the motivation behind this. Now, let me go to the previous slide. So as I mentioned here, these one-dimensional caricatures overlook the complexity of what's going on. Okay, and here's a quote. He was in East Berlin when the Soviet Union fell apart, and, quote, the Russian leader has said many times that he suffered the same misery as his compatriots when the Soviet Empire crumbled. And I give a website address for where that's from. what I've learned from this is that I've had a caricatured image of these macho people who have no feelings, militaristic people. There's something else going on, and this is what it is. Now, next thing we do very often in interpreting what's going on is we look at the midpoint structures. That's just from, and I haven't gotten to the most important thing yet. What we're going to see, way more powerful than that, way more important, way more fundamental, is a 7 vibration. This whole romantic thing, that's just one part of this and not the biggest part of it. I'm going to get to the biggest part of it in a moment, which we find when we look at the midpoint structures of the natal chart, and we see two very strong ones. We see Moon at Saturn-Pluto midpoint. Oh, sorry, no, we don't see that. I'm in his 9 vibration chart. Let's get back to the natal chart and look at the midpoints. And we see two midpoint structures here that are very tight. We see Venus at Sun-Moon midpoint, only 9 minutes. And we see Sun at Saturn-Neptune midpoint, 15 minutes. We go to this harmonic patterns listing number 8 to find out what vibrations are involved. And for the Saturn at, for the Sun at Saturn-Neptune, right here, I'm highlighting it. It's a 21 vibration with an 8-degree orb, which is solid. In other words, this Sun at Saturn-Neptune midpoint, very tight, has a very strong 21 vibration. We go to the 7 vibration chart, and there it is, the grand trine. Sun, Saturn, Neptune, because it's 7 times 3. Mars at 7 Sag is very tightly opposite Saturn, and that we did not know till we look at the 7 vibration chart. What's happening, in other words, is that there's a kite, which means a grand trine with another planet, opposition one of the 3 planets in the grand trine, and making the sextiles. All the aspects are an orb. This is huge. This is a big part of what is fueling, what is motivating, what is energetically behind this invasion is Mars opposition Saturn at the Sun-Neptune midpoint, and all in 21 vibration. 21, the sextiles will be 42. Soft 7. What does it mean? Mars and Saturn, between Sun and Neptune. Let's look at our notes, because this is the key. This tells us what's going on. Way more than that romantic stuff. That's there, but that's secondary. How do I know it's secondary? Fewer planets, weaker orbs. This is 4 planets, right on, tight aspects, and a very, very tight midpoint structure in the natal chart. You put all that together, it's very strong. And here's what it means, and this can be very difficult to understand. For example, for people like me that are Americans, from an American viewpoint, it may be difficult to imagine that Putin sees the West as violating the deep spiritual depth of Russia. What this 7 vibration chart tells us is that it's motivated by a sense of the deep, real, important spiritual depth of Russia. If you're familiar with meanings of vibrations and planets, that's very straightforward and clear. That's the motivation. When we're looking at this chart, we're not going to just see Mars, Uranus, Pluto, violence, it's war. We're going to see the energetic motivation, and this is the biggest one. This is the biggest pattern. 7 is deep. It's attached to its past. It's attached to its heritage, its rituals. So this is telling us that Putin is seeing the West as shallow, out of touch with what is really important. Mars, Saturn, not willing to do the real work. This is his point of view. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. We're not interested in right or wrong so much. When we analyze astrology, we want to see what the energy is. What does it mean to Putin? That's what it means. That's the reality that he lives in. There's a saying, if you want to beat your enemy, you have to understand your enemy. What astrology does is, if you think of Putin as the enemy, for example, maybe you don't, whatever, Doesn't matter. In astrology, we see what the energetic force is. That's what's going on with Putin. And we know a lot about 21 vibration from previous research on murderers, research on bipolar disorder. And what we know about 21 vibration is it's very prone to develop its own worldview. And that worldview is very frequently out of touch with the views of other people. So people just develop this, understanding of how things work that's kind of out of touch with everybody else. Murderers are like this. They very often, they're not just murdering to get money. They often have this unusual way of understanding the world, of understanding how things work. They've conjured up their own internal reality. That's what 21 vibration does. So I mentioned here we developed this research, we developed this theory from research on murderers, people with bipolar disorder, other research. 21 vibration inclines to avoid open dialogue. This is wonderful for focused work, for athletics, for developing an internal world. People that write novels and plays and paintings and other works where they create a whole deep world that requires prolonged quiet time and focus. 21 vibration is wonderful. The negative possibility is that by entering your world, your cave, where you're conjured up this world that you live in and screening out the rest of the world and screening out other points of view and relying on your own perception and intuition, is that you can get stuck in a point of view that is out of touch with the changing times. You are indifferent to the views of others, and this seems contradictory, but 21 vibration can give a profound and deep sensitivity and awareness at the same time as being closed-minded. That's the complexity of how the human mind and energy can work. It's deep, but some of that depth is developed by cutting out, filtering out the impressions and the information from other people. And it's not very uncommon. This is why people often have strong points of view. They're not listening. And we are now, after 2 years of the pandemic, people have been cut off, isolated. 21 vibration people at this point in time, given circumstances, can be this way even if they are the head of a government and you would think would have all kinds of input. He's getting input that reinforces his view. You're not getting the diversity of opinions. You hear them. It's not that 21 vibration people don't hear it, or they're not around it. They're not afraid of it. In fact, they're so confident in their point of view that they're happy to expose themselves, almost proud of it, expose themselves to other ideas. So we see this in politics all the time. People just hold on to a deeply entrenched sense. And that's what's going on with this invasion. And also, even though 21 is soft, you might think, oh, it's 21, it's sweet, it's gentle. Oh, no. 21 isn't so sweet and gentle. I'm not so sure why. There is a fluidity and a smoothness. But it gets it's a vital and powerful vibration. Maybe it's because 21 is a Fibonacci number. I don't know why, but it seems to play a very fundamental role in life. And a role that's essential, but can go out of balance by not listening and not incorporating other perspectives. So great, profound works can develop, and also conspiracy theorists and even murderers develop their own particular and peculiar worldview. And here I mentioned the pandemic, and also we've seen pictures of Putin at a negotiating table, for example, with the head of France, Macron, and it's an incredibly long table. I think it looks like it's 20 feet long. So I'm not criticizing Putin. I mean, the coronavirus is a very serious problem, and he has, insulated himself from possibly getting the disease, and it makes sense. I'm just saying, you put those circumstances into it, and this 21 vibration feeling can get very strong. Now, I'm not saying Putin has strong 21 vibration chart. We don't even know for sure what day the guy was born on. What I'm saying is that 21 vibration has entered into this event. All of us participate in different events. I don't know about Putin. Without his date and time, I can't see into him. But what I know is that this event is defined by 21 vibration, and specifically Mars, Saturn, Sun, Neptune. Also, to appreciate how people can think of the USA in such a negative way, to see us as violent, superficial, arrogant, a bunch of crazy Western cowboys who have no depth and sincerity. Here is a bunch of websites that can give you a sense of this, and they give data on how many people were killed by military action led by people in the United States. Again, what I'm explaining is the energy. Very often we have this tendency to want to judge, right, wrong, who's right, who's wrong. Is David saying the United States, is he one of those liberal people who thinks the United States actually made this happen? No, I'm not saying that, and I'm not even interested in that issue right now. As an astrologer, I want to feel what the energy is. I want to resonate with each person to feel what world they live in and what information they surround themselves with. So for a period of time, I detach myself from my own worldview and step into the view of my client and the person I'm analyzing in the situation. And if you want to step into that world, you can read these things and imagine that you believe them and feel them and experience them. That's the world of Putin, and it will help you understand what's going on. And we can look at the other midpoint structure. One is Venus at Sun, Moon, and it's in 33 vibration. And when we look at the 11 vibration chart, which is right here, we see that Venus, Mars, conjunction trine the Moon, and there's also Sun, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. It's a spreading kind of pattern. I won't go into the great details of this, but there is a vibrancy, a passion, and a little bit of looseness. Now, this is so shocking and surprising. I'm thinking of Putin as this rigid, KGB guy, and, he's not going to be dancing and flowing around and, just kind of very rigid and restricted. Well, it ends up that part of the energy behind this invasion is the feeling of lack of freedom. I mean, it may sound ironic from the point of view of people like myself who are Americans, and we think, we're the freedom people, we're the loose people. We do rock and roll and jazz and wear whatever clothes, and, they're more restricted. It's a more repressive environment. But what we learn by looking at this is this war is being triggered by a feeling of a lost beauty, the lost beauty of those countries and their soul and the music and the dance and the parties and the weddings. It's all gone. It's all been crushed by this militaristic people in NATO. I'm not saying it's true. I'm not saying that it makes any sense to anybody else. I'm saying that this is how people invested into this war are feeling and thinking and getting motivated by it. The chart reveals what the energetic patterns are. I'm telling you what they are. It makes sense of what's going on. Okay. And it came to me as a surprise. That's one of the great things about astrology. You learn what's really going on. If you look at the other basic vibrational charts, 5, 13, 17, etc., you will see that the 13 vibration chart has got very strong aspect patterns. Any chart that has strong aspect or integrated midpoint configurations is important. I noticed in 13 vibration, these dashed lines from Mars to Jupiter and Pluto in a hard aspect. What we do in vibrational astrology is we go up several octaves to see this more clearly. We go up to 13 times 4, which is 52. We see the Mars, Jupiter, Pluto T-square, we also see the Saturn-Uranus-Pluto conjunction. Let me go back to 13. In 13 vibration, there is also Saturn and Uranus conjunct square Pluto. And we see it in 52, it turns into a triple conjunction. And Uranus, I believe, is at the midpoint. If we look at the midpoints, Uranus at Saturn-Pluto midpoint, 39 minutes. Very solid, way under a degree orb. It's there. This is telling me that there's a very strong 13 vibration of Saturn, Uranus, Pluto. That's slow moving. Well, slow moving means it probably lasts at least a few days. We can use the time, adjust, and find out. I'm making this a week and a half later. It's out of orb, I'm sure by now. 2, 3, 4. Actually, it's staying in orb for about 5 days. Now it's out of orb by March 1st. So that first 3 or 4 days, all of this was in orb. The Saturn, Uranus, Pluto, that's extremely disruptive. Saturn, Uranus, Pluto in 13 vibration means jailbreak. Means let's get out of prison. Let's cut free. So this date that just happened to be convenient after the Olympic Games in China, that morning was right in the middle of the Saturn, Uranus, Pluto, and that means let's get out of our chains. Amazingly, Putin feels like he's in chains. We in the West are seeing him as the aggressor, like some maniacal person who needs to just overpower the will of people. He's seeing that you guys have broken up my country. You guys have this big military thing all around me. You guys have separated Kaliningrad from the rest of my country. This is horrific. This is, I've had it. I'm going to break free. Saturn, Uranus, Pluto, 13 vibration. We're going to claim our greatness. And this colors the entire invasion, the entire war. And not just the invaders, the whole theme. And we see that, ironically, it's not Russia that's taken the forefront in this stand. The Ukraine has stood up. The Ukrainian leader has won the hearts of people around the world for not running away, for standing up. And the Ukrainian people standing up, asserting ourselves, our greatness, that we will not be subdued, has become a theme. And that it has switched over to being the theme in favor of the Ukrainians is the theme that's made Ukraine come out surprisingly strong. People are surprised. No doubt Putin is surprised by the resistance. People are surprised by the strength and character of the Ukrainian people. This is the theme. So this is very, very disheartening for Putin at this point in time on March 3rd. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't think he can give up at this point. But it's ended up that this liberation is not so much a liberation of Russian culture as it is liberation of the Ukrainian people to fight to make a decision for what they want. So, those other things I was talking about with 7 vibration and the perception of the West as being the invaders. A lot of people are saying that the West has actually built this event by the United States aggression, etc. It may be true. It's possibly true. All of this can be true at the same time. Okay, I'm not going to give my opinion because that's not important. What's important is the energy and how people are interpreting it and what is going on so we understand it. Okay, so let me just go back to our PowerPoint. So a final note here. 2 wrongs don't make a right. Well, I will say this. To some extent, yes, the U.S.'s strong military presence around the world has provoked people to hate the USA. In bold, I have a conclusion here. To what extent the USA is the good guy or the bad guy, and to what extent Russia is the good guy or the bad guy, is not my focus in this video. This is very emotional. People have strong opinions. Again, what is important is that analyzing the chart helps us understand what motivates the invasion, why Putin greatly underestimated the resistance of Ukraine to the invasion. And especially important is that astrology informs us of what's really going on rather than justify our a priori beliefs. So that's what's going on. And it's not just that Putin wants to acquire more land and so on. Those are the motivations. That's the interpretation of what's going on in his mind, and that's why this is happening. And you see, I think we can say this, I think we can all agree about this, it's a little bit complicated. It's a little bit complicated. This is not simple, because people live in the world that they've developed. These astrological energies is the energetic matrix in which we live. And how we get out of it at this point is not clear. In retrospect, I will say this, and I hope everybody can agree with this. The United States has to start respecting and appreciating and allowing other countries to be the way they want to be. We have used the word regime change. Hillary Clinton often used it. People on both sides, Democrats, Republicans, forget it. We don't want, forget it. Don't worry about their oil or whatever else you can get. We have to respect people's decisions and what they want and not be the policeman of the world. So these are 7 vibration energies. We've seen 7 vibration in World War II. We've seen it in the terrorist attacks. We've seen it again here. People want their heritage. They want their way of life. This gets repeated over and over and over and over again, because the United States works against the 7 vibration interests of the rest of the world. They have their own heritage. They have their own history. They have their own way, and we need to let them be who they want to be, as long as whatever they're doing is not an extreme violation of people's dignity and pain and inflicting on our lives. And in most cases, it isn't. It isn't. And taking sides and supporting, Israel against Palestine and all this stuff is going to get us into more trouble. You may disagree. You may say, oh, no, United States needs to continue to be pro-Israel. I'm telling you that the astrology is telling us that all of these countries, driven by strong 7 vibration motivation, every single conflict seems to have this. It doesn't work. We need to work with the people, with their heritage, with their way of life, respect their traditions, and help them be who they are in their way, and not obliterate what's going on in their lives. A term like regime change has got to be thrown out completely, and what's in it for us, and so on. To the extent that works into it is the extent to which we create these situations, or we should say foster them, because they will not tolerate it forever. And so here's the point. Hitler, who everybody agrees is the worst of the worst, the 7 vibration was very, very strong during World War II. 7 vibration, because of its insulation from the rest of the world, because it can develop its own worldview outside of what's going on with everyone else, can become very, very dangerous. What's the antidote? The antidote is to help them, support them in building their own positive traditions that are healthy and positive, and have cultural exchanges, and appreciate and support the heritage that they have, and develop trade and exchange of ideas, and not try to do regime change or threaten them or see them as evil and they see us as evil. It's just not going to work. And actually, by doing that, they would become more liberal, more free-flowing, and less opposed to the rest of the world. That's the irony of it. Because when energy is not blocked, frustrated, and at war with other people, it's allowed to express itself and allowed to grow and evolve and incorporate other elements into it. So that's it. I just wanted to show you how we can see what's going on astrologically. Thank you very much for listening, my friends. God bless. Namaste.